never fails to make me want to carry on singing. What an absolute tune! My name is Ian Mills. Welcome to a Cross the Park podcast. I'm going to say an Everton FC special, but we are now an Everton FC podcast, so I don't need to say that anymore. Delighted to be joined by Mel Havey, who's a massive friend of the show. We so appreciate it coming back on. Surname is football royalty. We're going to talk the start of the season 22-23. Mel, first of all, like I've said there, thank you for coming back on your hat-trick appearance. How are you doing?
I'm absolutely delighted to be here. Yeah, I'm good. It's international break, so it all feels a bit weird, doesn't it? But especially after last night, but I'm sure we'll get to that. But no, I'm very well, thank you. Bit better than a few months ago when we were towards the end of last season.
Yeah, do you know what? I was looking back. I mean, we speak quite regularly, but I was looking back at our text messages where you were last on the podcast, and it was September last. So it's 1 year ago you were last on the podcast. You were on our debut YouTube show. If you remember, we were playing all sorts of games and throwing mud at the wall and trying to see what stuck. I think you were playing higher or lower at one point, so I apologise for what we put you through on our first show. But so much has happened since then. Before we talk now, let's talk then. I do want to ask about Crystal Palace. Before I ask about that, a little bit before then, Chelsea and the home games against Newcastle and even Brentford, even though we lost, the support. Now, I feel, even though we're part of it, I just feel the supporters last season at the tail end were nothing short of special. What was it like for you? Because I imagine you've seen the good times, the bad times, but have you ever seen Evertonians like the way they were last season?
Never seen anything like it. My personal opinion is them, Pickford and Richarlison got us over the line, but I think the part that was played by the supporters was just immense. I remember seeing the chats on Twitter before, I think, the first coach greeting and thinking, God, I wonder what the police will make of that. I wonder what the club will make of it. I wonder if anyone will turn up. And it was just wild. And then it just built from there, and going to Finch Farm to see the coaches off. We were at a 40th birthday party around that period of time. A very good friend of mine, massive blue. And I had the absolute honour and privilege of meeting the Hands Tours team, or some of them.
Great people.
Yeah, at this birthday party. And David Toffey was with us as well. And my husband, as you know, is a Red, so they absolutely slaughtered him all night. He came home feeling very bruised after that. We were talking a lot that night, and it was just that feeling of the fans are really, really going to do everything they can to drag us over the line. And I think it plays a huge part. It shouldn't have to. I remember saying to my dad, God, it's amazing what the fans, blah, blah, blah. And he said the same thing. He said it shouldn't have to. It shouldn't take that to make professional footballers raise the game. But I think it did. Yeah. I think it really did. And the other thing that I think it did was, I think it had a huge effect on Frank Lampard. I think it made him realise, if he didn't already, the passion of the supporters. I mean, Frank Lampard's played at some amazing football clubs with brilliant fans, but I think he said he's never seen anything like that. And none of us had ever seen anything like it. And I think it probably helped him as well, because I think it was very, very tough for him. I think he was put in a really difficult position. You know, he's separated from his family. There was a huge amount of pressure on him. And I think that probably helped him as well to see that, and to see that strength of feeling. As I say, it shouldn't take that to get players to raise the game, but I do think it had an effect. And what can I say? I personally didn't take part in any of it, so I take no credit for it whatsoever, but it was amazing, and I thank every single person who did.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was the same as you. When I seen the socials and I seen the plans, I'll be honest, I was guilty of thinking, cop-out behaviour, and we don't do that. But the more I thought about it, and the cop-out behaviour thing is they've seen such good times, and they react to maybe Champions League nights. We were doing it in a situation where we were staring into the abyss, and we were actually helping the football club and helping the football team. I was so proud. I wasn't a part of the plans, and I only turned up for the Palace game, the coach welcome for the Crystal Palace game, and it was one of those. That was one of those nights. I mean, for me, I walked after the Goodison Roads where the coach came in. I walked into the park end where I sit, and I thought I'll have a quick pint, and then I'll just try and settle my nerves. And I walked into the toilet, looked in the mirror, and my face was blue with all the pyro. And I thought, good God, I've just walked around the whole ground looking like that. And then the Palace game for me, I mean, it was just like people compare it, and rightly so, compare it to the Wimbledon and the Coventry where Everton the game was up and down and the fans' emotions were everywhere. First question, Mel, for you, at half time, honestly, were you thinking like this is really, really bad? Could you see what was coming?
I was devastated. I won't lie, those last few weeks of the season, I mean, and I've had a very stressful year in many ways for lots of different reasons, but those last few weeks of the season, I barely slept a wink. And I know my sister, our Emma, said exactly the same thing. Just, you were lucky if you were getting 3 or 4 hours sleep a night. And that moment, that half time, I don't know. Me and my cousin normally go down for a bottle of warm beer at half time, and I don't know whether we did, and I remember just sitting there thinking, what's this? I couldn't contemplate relegation. I couldn't contemplate it. But you're thinking, how's this,
It was staring us in the face, wasn't it? It was there.
Yeah. And I just remember thinking, oh God, what am I going to do? Literally, what am I going to do? How am I going to face anybody? It's just awful. But, fair enough. The final whistle, obviously my husband, who's a Red, he was one of the first text messages. And then another friend of ours who's a Red was the second text message. I don't know whether they were the first 2 text messages or they're just the first ones that managed to get through. And I thought, fair enough. I think proper, decent match going Reds didn't want us to go down. Well, they lose the derby for a start, which is obviously they love. But it was, it took a few weeks to get over. And I remember I took a picture of my cousin and I at the end of the match and put it on Instagram or Twitter or something. And I just said, brilliant scenes, but never again, really never again. And I was so relieved and I was so happy, but I was really angry. I'm still quite angry. I've got to be honest. I'm still quite angry that it got to that stage. There's still a little bit of anger in there.
Oh, I'm the same. Look, you can tell by you looking at me, I'm not somebody who runs marathons, but I compare it to maybe you run a marathon and it's so hard, and you're just done with it at certain points. And when you reach the end, that euphoria, you sit down, you think, probably never again. And I liken that to somebody who's never ran a marathon, but I'm 37 and I was on the pitch and I was acting like I was 17 and I was just like that football club and the game, what that game can do to you. But I know we've had you on a podcast before and you've spoke about Bayern Munich and other amazing nights. I think some of your great stories are watching the reserve games at Goodison in the 80s who would eventually become. But atmosphere-wise, did it take you back to maybe Bayern Munich?
Yeah, I mean, it did. Atmosphere-wise, that whole last few home games, you were buzzing. It was like, I always normally seem to arrive just after the coach greeting. So, but it would just be that view of Goodison Road and seeing all those people and the blue smoke and all that. And it felt great to be part of it. And again, I go back to how amazing the supporters were. But no, you can't compare it to coming home from the 1984 FA Cup final, which, as an 11-year-old kid, I remember getting off the train at, can't remember where we got off, and then we got on a bus before the trophy parade. And I just remember my legs turning to jelly at the sheer number of people and the noise and the atmosphere, and just, it was completely overwhelming. And then obviously that Bayern Munich game, completely overwhelming. It doesn't compare to them because it wasn't a good thing. Yeah. So it was huge relief and it was lovely to see. And it was all those things, but I still go back to, it still makes me a little bit angry that it ever happened. So yeah, atmosphere wise, it was incredible, but not really for the right reasons.
Yeah, I completely agree. And you know what? We'll bottle our anger and we'll put it into the next question, because I think it's a good segue into. We go into the pre-season, and I think a lot of fans knew what we needed, and we feared what may happen. I think everybody knows that we had a situation we had to get rid of maybe a big player, and that was going to be one of possibly 3 or 4. We did lose Richarlison. The way the football club have reinvested that money so far, even though we're at the first international break, but 20% through the season already, it looks like they've been clever. It looks like maybe there's a certain person who owns the football club has took a little bit of a back seat to meddling in transfers, and there looks to be, for me, Mel, at least, a little bit of a plan. What have you made of the incomings and the outgoings and that the club have managed to do in this window?
I'm like you. I thought it was inevitable. I remember sitting chatting to my dad towards the end of last season and saying, sitting fuming, ranting one day and going, and the only 2 I'd keep would be Pickford and Richarlison.
Yeah.
I think it was probably for that last little run of games. And I mean, I was fuming. I mean, so angry. They're the only 2 I'd keep. And he turned around and he went, they're the only 2 we'd be able to sell. And it was dead interesting. And I went, yeah. So, you know, I suppose it was inevitable that we were going to lose Richarlison. I was upset. And funny enough, I've just watched back Match of the Day again before chatting to you, just to crystallise a couple of things in my mind. We still miss that bit of quality, don't we? I mean, we really do. And I think the number of goals we've scored and the number of chances we're creating,
of course,
shows that we're really missing that real bit of quality that he brought us. And you know, as I say, you know, between him, Pickford, and the supporters, that's what kept us up. There's no doubt about that. And I remember him saying, we will get out of this, we'll get us out of this. And he did, he kept his word. So I was really, really upset about him going. You know, he maybe goes down a little bit too much, but I just think he's a really, really good footballer. And I think he was the best player we had. Yeah. We got decent money for him. Have we replaced him? No, we haven't replaced him. We've strengthened in other areas where we needed to. I mean, the defence for the last few seasons has just been horrendous. That's a combination of poor signings and injuries, and having a decent player in Mina who just, you know, doesn't appear to be able to keep fit. So, you know, as far as I'm concerned, he's a write-off because he just can't stay fit. So the central defenders and Cody and Tarkowski, even though Cody apparently can't play in a 4, they I know, I'm hoping Wolves don't look at that now and go, well, we can play in a 4, we'll have it back. Thanks.
But you know what, you saying that, do you know what the most evident thing ever is? He starts having nightmares now in a 4. He starts not playing in a 4.
I know. And I think the 2 fullbacks, you could see Mikalenko towards the end of last season. He started to look, and you know, I've got a lot of friends who are Rangers. I've lived in Glasgow for a long time, so I've got a lot of Rangers friends, and they all kept telling me how good Patterson was and will be, and they were right. You know, to be honest, out of the 2 fullbacks, looking at them, I think he'll end up being the best out of the 2 of them. If he can keep injury free, but that's another story. So we obviously those 2 were already in, but in the central defence, there's been reinvestment there. It was badly needed, and it wasn't just badly needed in terms of quality; it was badly needed in terms of characters. And the 2 of them are really strong characters. And again, I was just rewatched Match of the Day there from the weekends, and they highlighted the cover in the dirt. Now, don't get me wrong, neither of them are perfect. There's much better defenders in the Premier League than those 2. But from what I've seen so far, they've got something. They're strong. They're good characters. They'll cover for each other. They're hardworking. They're not afraid to get stuck in. And I think that's made a real difference. So the reinvestment there has been good. The highlight for me of the incomes has obviously been Garner Gay coming back. That to me is just, you know, he's just makes it look so easy. He does what looks like a little toe poke, and it's actually a tackle, but he doesn't. He's brilliant, and he looks so far. I know we've not seen much, but he looks as good as he was. So
he looks better.
Well, he's probably learned, hasn't he? He's gone away and he's played with some brilliant players. I mean, he's probably playing in a slightly easier league, to be fair, but he that's been the highlight for me. The rest
I
of
think
them,
everything you're saying. I think everything you're saying there is right. I think to bring in character now for me, like I don't want to put words in any Evertonians' mouths, especially you as a guest on the show. But for me, I've always thought Everton over the past few years have really lacked leadership and character. And there's times I've left the game. And an example is if you remember last season when Watford beat us 5-2 at Goodison, I left that game and I said to Price, who I sit next to, any team can get beat 2-1 or 3-2. But to get beat 5-2 at home, I identify as where we're so weak that no one even said, like, I'm going to stick a foot in here and I'm going to fight for the shirt. And all of a sudden, we've got a couple of players who are in the team who are doing it. Even though it was so cruel how the Conor Cody goal against Liverpool didn't stand, to watch his celebration as a boyhood Liverpool fan, and he's touching the badge and he's in the Gladys Street almost, and he's doing that. And you see James Tarkowski, who just looks like he's going for a fight. It looks like it's 2:00 in the morning on Matthew Street every match day for him. He's just up for fighting, and in a nice way. I mean, and in a nice way as well.
But that's the thing. I mean, they as I say, they're not the best defenders in the league by a million miles, but they're all right. They're good. You know, some of the tackles. I mean, there was a couple of really, really good tackles on Sunday. And I just didn't feel like we were really seeing that from our central defenders last season. So yeah, that's good to see, and I think that's strengthening. And I think bringing Garner Gay back's really, really good. And then we've had Iwobi. It's like signing a new player, isn't it? It genuinely is like having made a new signing. So there's definitely a lot of encouraging signs, and I don't think defenders will lose as many goals. As we did last season. I'm very concerned about where we're scoring goals. I genuinely, I'm really, really worried about that. And that was one of the main reasons I watched that back. I was like, because I remember coming away from that game thinking, he didn't really have that many chances. He had one chance, Mopey, didn't he? And he scored it, and he took it really, really well.
Yeah.
But I remember thinking, how many chances did we actually have? Gray's decent. He is. He's definitely decent. Gordon.
This season, maybe.
Million? I wasn't told the 60 million.
Yeah. And you're not the only person who's been on the show and said that.
I don't mean to him. I mean, he's a decent young player, but he's not the player. He's not a £60 million footballer by any stretch of the imagination. He's good. He's done some good things. There's definitely a raw talent there, but there's a long way to go. There's probably an argument for taking him out for a while. He was poor. He was poor on Sunday. He was really poor. That's probably the worst game I've seen him have. And he deserved to come off. And that spat with Patterson, he deserved everything he got off Patterson as well. I mean, so, I think I'm not 100% won over that we've got enough decent, real top quality attacking players, but Iwobi is making a difference. But we are going to miss Richarlison. And we just are, and there's no point in lying. And I am a little bit worried about. I hope I'm wrong, but I'm a bit worried about where the goals are coming from.
Yeah, look, it's. I think it's a really fair point, and I look on Twitter and I have a drink at the game, and I think everyone's sort of saying the same thing. I think if you look at statistically, McNeil and Maupay, you've got to be realistic on what we're going to get from those players. That they're not going to turn into Richarlison, or they're not going to turn into. And I think we've got to be in a situation where Everton winning that game 1-0 on Sunday is how we're going to have to win most of our games, with a solid back four, with a midfield who will fight and got lots of energy. And if you get a couple of chances, one of them will get put away. But to stay with that theme, Mel, how are you feeling the season has gone so far? Because we're sort of unbeaten in 6 if you count the Carabao Cup games, and then if you look back, it took us 5 league games to win a game. So you can look at it both ways, can't you? How are you feeling so far with the season?
I mean, you need a couple more wins on the board by this stage of the season. I think personally, particularly as we're going to go into a really long break and stuff. But I think I'm encouraged by what I'm seeing defensively. I'm slightly concerned by what I'm seeing going forward. So, and that to me is the story of the season so far. I think Frank Lampard said after Sunday's game, we probably would have drawn that game a couple of weeks ago, and we've won it on Sunday. And if that's if you're going to build on that, you know, if you can do that, carrying on that. But if you're beaten a not particularly good West Ham side 1-0, how are you going to get on against the bigger teams? You know, how are we going to get on against? You know, we did really well against Liverpool, but that's the worst Liverpool team for 5 seasons. You know, I said to my cousin at half time, said, if we don't beat these today, we're not going to beat them again, because they're going to be stronger than this by the time we play them at Anfield, and they're going to be stronger than this next season, because they're not going to allow that situation to continue where they lose a couple of players through injury and they haven't got the right backup. They're going to change that. I would have thought. I know they didn't sign a lot in the window, but I can't see them allowing that to continue. So I think we'll be all right. And I'm encouraged by it's nowhere near as bad as it was. I mean, you know, when you think about the way we were playing under Rafa Benitez, I mean, that was just, I mean, it was embarrassing. It was mortifying. I mean, it literally was humiliating. Some of those games, I was coming away and I was thinking, I actually feel humiliated as an Evertonian today. So, yeah, I don't feel like that. So that's got to be an improvement, hasn't it?
You dragged me down there. I was revisiting. Oh, God, I felt terrible. Now I'm back again.
Can you believe that? Can you actually believe that that man was the manager of Everton? Can you believe that? I still can't believe it.
No, and it's one of those things that when it happens, I think collectively we just sort of said, we've just got to get our head around it and try. And
I still can't get it. I cannot get my head around the fact that it ever happened. And I do sometimes think about it now and I go, God, did I dream that? Oh no, it actually
this week. Did you see his interview this week in the press where he was blaming everything but himself? And when he came, the Reds on the old podcast were actually saying like he does not accept blame. Like he will divert the blame, and he's doing it still. He was saying that Nick Gordon wasn't fit enough to play 90 minutes, which I think one of Gordon's strengths is that he can play 90 minutes personally. I think he's got lots of energy. He was saying that he couldn't make the changes that he wanted to make. Now I'm looking at it going, you came in and released probably the most talented player we had to an UAE team. The other creative left wing back we had, you upset him, so off he went. You ripped the medical staff. So what were you? If we didn't let you make the changes, what on earth were you planning? Because it was disastrous as it was.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing he did was all right, and I think he's all right. I don't think he's ever going to be a world-class player. Damari Gray's done some great things for us. Yeah. As we know, he hit a great free kick that ends up in a goal that kept us in the league. But I think he's, you know, I think he's decent. So that was a shrewd bit of business. But honestly, I still do wake up sometimes and go, did I dream that? Was he actually the manager of Everton Football Club? I just still can't believe it. So let's not.
I think with Frank, I think a good point is, you're right. I think a good point is Frank Lampard. If I was Frank Lampard, there's no one else I'd rather follow than him, because, and I think that even subconsciously, without realising it, that's a big part of why I'm really a big fan of Frank, because of who he's followed, and he's probably cleverly played the game. I always say that it's chess, not checkers, and he's very clever with the sound bites, and he's engaged with Evertonians, but what better?
I'd rather have that than what we had before, even if it doesn't mean the words of it.
Exactly. Yeah, just keep lying as long as you're not Rafa. Look, again, there's saying I do agree. I think going forward, I think when Everton go forward, I'll stand off my seat and I'll hope, but I don't think we've got enough talent to maybe kill teams. I think at times that will catch us out. I think there's times where we might lose 1-0 and with a striker we may draw or win the game. There's areas that Everton need to address still going forward. But look, I personally, looking ahead, I don't feel we're going to be in a relegation battle. Do you feel that?
No, I don't think we're going to be in a relegation battle. I don't think we're going to be challenging either.
Just that middle.
It could end up just being a mid-table mediocrity season, but you know what? After last season, we'll take it. Just going back to that lack of quality thing again, the one thing that, and I haven't looked at any stats on this or anything, but my instinct has been during and after games, I don't feel our set pieces are brilliant.
No, they're not.
Some of the taking of corners and things, and that's quite worrying. And that takes me, and again, it sounds like I'm picking on him, and I do actually quite like him as a player, but I just think some of the set pieces from Gray aren't the best. So I feel like there's a bit of work to be done there, because there are opportunities when you're as you're in the position that we're in. You need to be taking those opportunities. If you've got a corner at a crucial part of the game, or they're all crucial parts of the game, or you've got a free kick in a decent position. I mean, he knocked the great one in, for the goal. But yeah, I just feel like there's a bit of work to be done there.
I know, I completely agree, and we're recording this on the end of September, 20% into the season. I think we've got another block of games, and then there's a 6-7 week gap for the World Cup. Look, I don't want to get into that because I still don't understand how on earth there's a World Cup in December. It is what it is. If we just read the next block of fixtures, Mel, for you. So it's Southampton away, it's Manchester United at home, Tottenham away, Newcastle away, Palace at home, Fulham away, Leicester at home, and then our sort of half season ends with 2 games back to back against Bournemouth, 1 in the cup and 1 in the league. I'm looking at that, and Tottenham away screams out, we're in trouble. Nothing else really screams out to me that they're games we can't win. Have I been bitten by the graph of hope? Am I now, am I on the graph of hope going up? Because I'm now thinking, are we going to have a really good next period? And do we get to January? And I don't know. I'm just being an optimistic Evertonian. Am I being too optimistic? Have you got to reel me back in? How do you see the next 20-25% of the season going with them fixtures?
Well, we're going to beat Leicester, aren't we? So
we're not now. We're not now.
Right, let's have another little look. Let's just see what was just said there.
First game, Southampton away.
Right, Man United will be interesting because you just don't know what Man United team you're going to get.
True.
So you can play Man United one week at the moment and they're absolutely awful, and then you can play them the next week and they're decent. So you just don't know. I mean, I'd like to think it's a nighttime game. It should be getting dark by then. So I mean, I'd like to think we'll beat them. So Newcastle again, that's another one that can be a bit tricky. I kind of feel like they've got to start doing something because they're going to be very ruthless, aren't they? I
don't think it's a bad time to have them. I don't think it's a bad time to have them. I think
probably not. Better to probably have them now, because if that doesn't go well, they'll just change the manager during the World Cup. They'll see who's available and then they'll go there. Fulham away, we probably should win that. What else are we talking about before the World Cup?
Bournemouth away.
Tottenham. Tottenham will be tough. Should be. Yeah, we'll definitely beat Leicester. If we don't beat Leicester, flipping out. Bournemouth away. Yeah, we should be winning that. So, yeah, I mean, there's some very winnable fixtures there, isn't there? There really are. There's a couple that I think United will be trickier than we probably give them credit for, and then I wouldn't expect us to get anything. If we got anything at Tottenham, I think it'd be a bonus.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but there is some others there that we should be getting a result. Really, we should. I'd like to think out of those games, you're looking at least 10 points. Do you think?
Do you know what? That's not really a bad return. If you can win 2 and draw 4 of those next games, I really think if you go into January and we can possibly address the areas me and you've discussed there, and maybe we can get Dominic Calvert-Lewin somehow, if we can get him fit.
I think that'll make a big difference, because it's not just his goals. I mean, it's when he's on form, his play in and around is decent. He can hold the ball up, which we've obviously been missing. There's not really been that outlet. So I do think if we can get him back before, after this international break, that would make a big difference. But I don't know. Do you get the impression that injury's taking a little bit of a turn for the worse again, or so?
There's rumours this week, isn't it, that he's tweaked something again. Look, I'm not one of those in the nose. I don't claim to be.
Me either. So
well, you're more in the know than me. You're definitely more in the know than me.
So yeah, I think it is a worry. The going forward's the worry for me. I mean, it really does remain a worry without Richarlison. I'd love to think that Gray and Gordon could really come good and prove me wrong, and knock in 3 or 4 goals each before the World Cup. Wouldn't that be brilliant? And I'd love nothing better for the pair of them to prove me wrong. But I am a bit concerned about that area.
I think it's a fair place to probably close the first review of the season, Mel. It's always a pleasure to have you on. I'd love to get you back on and do another one after the next set of games, and we'll try and make it a regular thing. I can't not have you on. And as Evertonians, you're probably screaming at me to ask you, how is the legendary Mr. Colin Harvey your father? Because he went viral with a picture of Onana at the Chelsea game.
You want to know who took that picture? That picture was taken, no, not by me. That picture was taken by Lily Kendall.
Oh, the legendary wife of the late Howard, yeah.
Yes, I wasn't lucky enough to be in the posh lounge that day. I was in the cheap seats with the warm beer. With McCall, we get warm beer in our part of the grounds. I never stopped saying that. It's outrageous. But I think I met her after. Yeah, I did. I met her afterwards, and we went out, and she went, "Took this picture of your dad with that new player." Dad was going mad because he hates having his picture taken. His dad was going mad. I was going, "Come on, Carl, get your picture taken." And she's hilarious. Well, she always gets everyone's name wrong. I mean, genuinely. Honestly, we walk up to people and I'm going, it's blah blah blah, and she still gets the name wrong. It's dead funny. So anyway, she couldn't remember what he was called. I don't know. He's new. He's just signed. What's he called? So I said, show me the picture. So that's an Anna. She's like, oh, she said, you know what your dad's like. He hates getting his picture taken. So she took the picture and she put it on Facebook. Everyone was and I was like, he was raging the fact he had to get his picture taken in the first place because he's so shy. And then it went mad. And then I think my cousin grabbed it, or Liam grabbed it, and he put it on Twitter, and loads of Blues follow him. And then, yeah, before we knew it, it was everywhere. It's like little and large. My dad's dead small as well. So, yeah. So it was quite funny. But that shows you the contrasting types of midfielders, doesn't it? I mean, and Arna's legs go on forever, don't they? And then you look at my dad, he's dead small.
That'd be a good midfield, that wouldn't it? Wouldn't be too bad.
Yeah, they'd be all right now. I'd say Dad's more like Garner's height and build, isn't he? He's sort of smaller and slimmer. So, yeah, that's how it came about. So it was quite funny. I said it to her about a week or two later. I said, you know that picture you took? I said, it's gone mad. Everyone's talking about it. She's like, Dad didn't even want that picture taken. I said, I know he hates getting his picture taken. He wasn't being rude to an Anna. He was just like... So that was quite funny, yeah. So... They normally come in if they've signed and they're not playing, if they've not got the paperwork in time or something like that. They normally go in that lounge for the game before. So I remember when Dele Alli signed last season, we were sitting there and he walked in and my nephew, Dele Alli, can I get my picture taken with him? So yeah, that was the story behind that. That was the photography skills of Lily Kendall.
It was great to see. I just remember seeing it. I'm not sure whether it was that night or the next day, and I just thought, it's great to see Colin Harvey with Onana. And what in your mind you start thinking, like I've just said, what a midfield that would be, and taking it back. But Mel, like I said, it's been absolutely amazing to have you back on the show. It's great to hear that your legendary father is still going to games, still kicking on, looking as great as he does, similar to yourself.
Still wants a full dissection of the match with me afterwards, and we have a good old rant and a rave, and it's good as well. He points things out, he sometimes points things out and you go, God, I probably wouldn't have noticed that. He does see a lot. It's really interesting. It's quite interesting sitting next to him, but he hates sitting next to me because I'm always screaming and shouting and bawling, and he doesn't say a word.
You're proper Everton, aren't you? Proper Everton. Oh, like I said, I introduced you, surname, football royalty, but more importantly to us, an amazing friend of the show. Mel, thanks for joining Across the Park podcast again.
Pleasure. Thanks very much for asking me.